Let me take you back to a place that might be a little uncomfortable. Middle school. I'd like to tell you about my middle school art teacher. For anonymity's sake, let's call her Miss Frizzle. And Miss Frizzle became notorious for doing something that was particularly weird. Picture it. Middle school me sculpting a person out of clay, when all of a sudden Miss Frizzle yells one word from across the room. She yells, "Medic!" And before I know it, Frizzle has run over to my station, her hands are reaching over my shoulders, and my clay person has quickly turned into a chair. I sat there and thought, well, what the heck? Was she a part-time field nurse or something? Now, I know Miss Frizzle was trying to help, but she just didn't stop to listen. That's what I love about United Way. We always listen first. And then we take what we've learned about our community's needs to help people leverage their fullest potential. Because there is listening and helping that needs to be done in our community. Today, I'd like to talk to you about what it means to be a change maker. And I can't wait to invite you to take part in the change maker movement. Because when we come together, we can find solutions to problems no one can solve alone. COVID-19 hit all of us like a train. And even through the hardships of pandemic life, United Way has never stopped listening. For example, when our 211 helpline saw a drastic increase in requests related to housing instability, we took that data to policymakers to help unlock $100 million in state funding for housing support. COVID-19 has been isolating for all of us. I mean, how many of you have felt unheard at some point throughout the pandemic? Now think, how many people experiencing housing instability or poverty in our community have felt unheard? For those people, United Way has been there to listen. That is what being a change maker means. Let me talk to you a bit more about what we mean by change making. And to do it, I'm going to talk about dogs. So a couple years ago, I walked into the Fairfax County Animal Shelter. I tell you this because that is where I met one of my biggest change makers. That's where I met Diego. Now, when we got home, I quickly realized someone had been hurting Diego probably his whole life. I started to see the scars, what looked like cigarette burns down his chest. I remembered. You listen, and then you help. Within just a few months, Diego was the happiest and the healthiest he'd ever been. See, I tell you this because listening is what's necessary to create meaningful change where it's needed. And that is exactly what United Way does. We pay close attention so we can see where the scars are in our community. I bet just about every Minnesotan can remember where they were or what they were doing when the news about George Floyd broke. His tragic murder right here in the community that we love forced a reckoning with long-standing systemic racism and oppression. That, too, is the result of generations of failing to listen to a community fighting desperately to be heard. But we at United Way recognize going forward means you have to acknowledge your past. As a community focused on equity and inclusion, we've done just that. We've listened first, and then brought forth working solutions to shape our future. In addition to providing financial relief, though, we took the job one step further by listening to community members speaking out about police brutality. This means working with community leaders to co-create solutions, and then taking the solutions upstream to policymakers to advocate for systemic changes. I'll ask again, how many people of color in our community do you think have felt unheard in the last year and a half? We all know, sometimes just having someone listen can be the most meaningful thing in the world. But sometimes, that is change making. Let me tell you one more thing. I spent some time hurting this year because in January, after years of teaching me about love and joy and listening, I lost Diego. Now, I know Diego was a dog and not a person in our community, but Diego was a change maker. He was to me. See, as much as I know as I did some listening and helping and change making for him, I know what that means because he did some change making for me. The time for that change will always be right now. United Way is committed to doing the work that needs to be done, but we can't do it without you. Today, I'd like to invite you to take part in the changemaker movement. But what exactly does that look like? Well, we invite you to champion, volunteer, or donate. You can champion our cause by doing something as simple as providing a 211 helpline card to someone who needs it. You can volunteer your time at a community impact event to help create the change where it's needed. Or you can donate your money through an automatic payroll deduction. Together, we can unite to fuel meaningful change in our community. A couple months ago, I brought home a new puppy. His name is Elton John, though my dad has aptly taken to calling him Rocket Man. And I see my old, sweet Diego in him every day. That's the thing about listening and helping. It creates change that ripples across generations. So let me just finish by saying, thank you for being a change maker.